Detective Ray Duncan had been patrolling the quiet streets of Oak Ridge for over a decade. He liked to think of himself as the last line of defense against the wrong kind of people creeping into the upscale neighborhood. His kind of policing wasn't about laws. It was about control. So when he saw the black woman in the sleek black Mercedes pull into the gas station just a block away from one of the richest neighborhoods in town, he felt that familiar itch in his gut. She didn't belong. He flicked on his lights and pulled up beside her just as she stepped out of the car. She was tall, elegant, dressed in a white evening gown that clung to her slender frame. Gold earrings dangled from her ears, and her dark curls were perfectly styled. She exuded wealth, confidence, things Duncan wasn't used to seeing in people like her. Olivia Carter barely glanced at the approaching police car. She had just left a charity gala and was stopping for a bottle of water before heading home. Her husband, Judge Thomas Carter, was likely still shaking hands and making deals at the event. She sighed when she saw the officer stepping out. She knew the look, the slight smirk, the hand resting too comfortably on his belt where his gun sat. The entitled stance of a man who was used to bending reality to his will. Duncan took his time approaching. He enjoyed these moments, the brief second before they knew what was coming. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "This car yours?" Olivia turned fully to face him. Her deep brown eyes studied him with something close to boredom. "Yes, officer. Is there a problem?" Duncan narrowed his eyes. She wasn't afraid. That annoyed him. "Mind showing me your ID?" he said, shifting his weight slightly. "Just a routine check." Olivia folded her arms. "Did I violate any traffic laws?" Duncan smiled, slow and knowing. "Just doing my job, ma'am. Making sure everything's in order." There it was. The script. Olivia had seen it play out too many times. Black people pulled over for no reason, harassed, and sometimes never making it home. But she also knew something Duncan didn't. She reached into her purse slowly, keeping her movements deliberate. She pulled out her driver's license and, along with it, a crisp white business card. She placed them both in Duncan's outstretched hand. Duncan took the license, barely glancing at the card, too focused on finding something, anything, to justify his suspicion. "You from around here?" he asked, flipping her license between his fingers. Olivia smiled, tilting her head slightly. "I live 5 minutes away. Officer Duncan. In fact, I'm sure you patrol near my house." She paused, watching his expression. "Ever heard of Judge Thomas Carter?" Duncan's grip on her license tightened. His eyes flickered down to the business card for the first time. Judge Thomas Carter, Federal District Court. His mouth twitched. Yeah, he knew Carter. Everyone in law enforcement did. The judge was no pushover. Duncan cleared his throat and forced a tight-lipped smile. "Yeah, I know Carter." "Good," Olivia said, her voice smooth. "He's my husband." Duncan shifted uncomfortably. By now, the gas station clerk, a young Hispanic man, had pulled out his phone and was filming. A few other customers had also stopped to watch. Duncan could feel their eyes on him. He could escalate. He had done it before, but this was different. This wasn't just some random woman. This was the wife of a man who had the power to ruin his career with a single phone call. Duncan inhaled sharply, then handed her license back. "Just making sure everything's in order, ma'am. You have a nice night." Olivia took her license, slipping it back into her purse. She didn't move right away. She let the moment hang between them. Let him feel his own insignificance for once. Then with a slow, knowing smile, she said, "Oh, I will. And so will my husband, when I tell him about this little encounter." She turned, stepped back into her Mercedes, and drove off, leaving Duncan standing there, seething, humiliated and exposed. By morning, the video had spread online. By noon, Judge Carter had made some calls. And by the end of the week, Duncan was facing an internal investigation that he wasn't going to walk away from. The wrong kind of people indeed.